Hey y'all, welcome to the start of another weekly reading vlog. As per usual, we are gonna have the books that I picked for my TBR jar polls for the month. I'm gonna be focusing on reading those this week. However, before we even get into those, currently I am in the middle of other books. Unfortunately, I've not been doing nearly as well reading this month as I was wanting to, and I think it's just because I've been really busy and life's just been a little crazy. I'm really hoping I can buckle down and get all these books read this week. Currently, audiobook-wise, I am in the middle of Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is the sequel to Legends and Lattes. No, it's the prequel, that's right. We are once again following our main character Viv, who is an orc. However, this time she has been injured during a raiding party fighting against this necromancer. She ends up staying in this very small town and befriending the bookshop owner. She's basically helping this, she's a ratkin, Fern, to take care of her bookshop, kind of spruce it up, drum up more business, and she's also befriending different people in the town. And while that's all happening, she kind of continues to investigate what's going on with this necromancer. I'm glad I picked up the audiobook rather than buying this, because right now my feelings on it are very similar to what my feelings were for Legends and Lattes. It's cute. The author can do cozy atmosphere. They know how to write like food in a very appetizing way. All of it sounds delicious. There's a lot of like references to things that, you know, your average book lover can relate to. That's really cute, but I don't know, it just feels so meh. I put it on and I can listen to it, but there's never any time where I feel like I have to keep reading. I can't stop listening. I would have no issue stopping in the middle of a chapter. It's fine. I have about an hour and a half left though, so I am definitely gonna finish that out. Then for my nonfiction read, I have Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes. I'm at page 175. This is roughly about 290 pages. And unfortunately, I've been working through this really slowly, which is such a shame because I'm actually very much enjoying it. Fascinating. I love Natalie Haynes' writing. Also, the really dry, sarcastic comments she will drop here and there have me cracking up. I've been having a really great time annotating this, taking note of how women characters are vilified, how their tragedies are so often overlooked, how often they get objectified in these Greek stories. Fascinating. Oh, my tea is done steeping. Each chapter is focused on a different female character from Greek myths and how their story changes based on the different classic pieces you're reading. How the story we know now has shifted and the nuance that has been added or lost throughout time. There's also many of these that she ends up making connections to biblical stories, which is something I also find very fascinating. I'm loving this, but unfortunately I've just been reading really slowly. I don't know if it's because I'm annotating it or because I just don't have a lot of time lately. I'm also actively trying to get 100 pages of Small Sacrifices read weekly. I sectioned it out. That'll make it a little bit less intimidating because of the size. However, that 100 pages still takes up some time. Meaning I'm currently in the middle of reading 3 books, and then we have the 2 books that I need to get read this week. As for the books I will be picking up for my TBR jars, for the digital poll I had the or of in the title, I will be reading The Five by Hallie Rubenhold, which is a true crime book focusing on the victims of Jack the Ripper. Then for my physical book, I will be reading Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. I think my draw was anticipated. Yes. This is also the group book for the month for the Fall into Winter Readathon, which is taking place. I'll put information for that in the description down below if you were intrigued. Very low key. It is a bingo board. If you manage to black out the board, you get entered into a giveaway. If you're interested, like I said, it's really easy. Join us. I also got the audiobook for this one from my library as well. I think Jenny Lawson herself reads it, so I would be interested to see what the audiobook experience would be for one of her stories, because I read her last book, Let's Pretend This Never Happened, physically. So I wonder if that kind of adds to the voice of her story more. It's Sunday. My mom and I took my niece and nephew to this like Disney Junior thing today. Concert meets a costume dance party thingy for little kids. It was really cute, but it was a bit tiring. I also learned that apparently Miles Morales' Spider-Man is called Spin in the Disney Junior Spider-Man TV show. That was interesting. And I'm like 95% certain that Patrick Stump sang like all of the songs for the Spider-Man show bit, so that was interesting as well. Josh is going to be staying with me this week. Currently, he's at work. I am going to drink my sleepy time tea and try to get some more read into Pandora's jar while I wait for him to get home. Hey y'all, happy Monday. I hope you had a good one. Mine was very up and down. Found out I did some paperwork for nothing. It was a complete waste of time, and that's always irritating. I came home, I was pretty productive. I filmed 2 videos, I filmed an update. I transferred over all of that footage to my computer. Currently I'm filming this update. And then I made a delicious soup for dinner. It technically was spicy coconut turkey curry soup. That's the one Josh voted for. Seeing as how I do cook a fair amount myself already, I do tend to like change up the recipes slightly. So for this one, I added more carrot. I did white onion instead of scallions. I added celery, garlic, some turmeric. Oh, I also added mushrooms as an extra protein. So it was a lot chunkier, but it was pretty tasty overall, if I do say so myself. I was very proud of that one. Anyway, while I was working on that, I did manage to finish Bookshops and Bone Dust. That's what it's called. I think I like the finale of this one more than I did Legends and Lattes, but I do feel like this one dragged a lot more because I was already introduced to the world. I already knew our main character. So it didn't immediately draw me in, but I think the climax was a little bit more entertaining. I liked that it had to do with a necromancer. You know, Locked Tomb continues to showcase that it's taken over my life. I also thought that the epilogue being from Viv's perspective after Legends and Lattes was really cute. I did like that. Like I said, the plot was just very slow moving. There's a romance that takes place in this one as well, which obviously I can't get invested in because it's a prequel, and you already gave me a romance in the regular book. And like, I know it's not going to go anywhere serious. For the most part, my feelings are pretty on par with Legends and Lattes. I haven't done an official compile breakdown yet, but it'll probably be around the same rating. Once I finished that, I did officially start into the 5, and I have that going on audio. So far, it's been very historical intro. She's really focusing on the time period, introducing where these women lived, what their lives would have been like, and especially she has been talking about the socioeconomic circumstances that these women lived in. The first chapter officially starts. It is focusing on Polly, the first victim. I have to say, I'm impressed that Hallie Rubenhold is really like starting back all the way when Polly was born, explaining her family's place in society, how that impacted Polly's upbringing, the kind of woman she probably was. Intrigued so far. I like what's happening. This has the possibility to draw me in and really engage me the way Kate Moore's Radium Girls did. Apart from that one though, Josh was a little late coming home last night, so I stayed up even later than I was planning working on Pandora's jar. I think when I last talked to y'all, I think I was in Clytemnestra. So then I read Eurydice's chapter last night, which honestly is probably my least favorite thus far. There weren't really as many lines or perspectives on the stories that I was really fascinated by and annotating in comparison to previous chapters. Currently, I am in Phaedra's, and I am really liking that. The significance behind the fact that Phaedra's story is one that is so well known because of the fact that she falsely accuses Hippolytus of. It's so interesting that that one has survived so long when there are numerous other stories involve other women actually being victims of, and how many of those stories get glossed over, which is definitely a running theme throughout this, is the overlooking of tragedy that women in Greek myths had endured. I also really like that she'll explore more of the circumstances that go into the fantastical elements that often get overlooked. The stories will focus more on the humans, but for the Phaedra example, I originally knew it as she was in love with Hippolytus, but he ends up rebuffing her because he has promised himself to Artemis, the virgin heroine, god, whatever, and Phaedra can't handle that. Apparently, I didn't know there's one telling of the story where Aphrodite actually forces that on Phaedra as a way to punish Theseus. I've never heard of that one before. Well, I know I have Medea left, and that one I'm really intrigued to see because, I mean, she is definitely very villainous woman. So interested to see what Haynes will reveal to me because all of these I've been learning more stuff. Oh, I also have Penelope. That one I'm very excited for because I loved Penelope's chapters in 1,000 Ships, which was Natalie Haynes's fictional book. I am gonna try and do a little bit of editing tonight because I need to do some, and I know myself I probably will not get any done tomorrow. Josh has Tuesdays off now, so it's kind of become like our official date night, like during the week, make dinner together and like watch a movie and actually take that time to spend the time with each other during the week if we can. Meaning I probably won't get any editing done, so I need to do that. And then I think I'll give myself a cutoff of like 10. I really want to try and finish this tonight if I can. I have about 2.5 chapters left. So if there's leaves, it's officially fall. Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Forgot to update last night because I'm coming down with something. I'm fairly certain I caught my niece and nephew's cold, unfortunately. Also, if you hear any background noise, I just gave Faith like meat drippings over her food, so she's very happy. I woke up yesterday, I had a really bad sore throat. But by last night, I just felt like death. I didn't even think about updating. Also, I have a ton of drainage. My ears are like really blocked up, so hopefully I'm not actively yelling at you. So hi, yesterday was really nice. Josh and I went and took Faith on a nice long walk, and then we came back. We made dinner together. We made these delicious paninis, which were really good. And then Josh has been showing me Naruto, so we watched some of that. Kakashi is actively my favorite character right now. Naruto is so annoying. Sasuke's fine, and I kind of like Sakura, but I feel like you can really feel the age of the TV show and how Sakura's characterized. But I did finally finish Pandora's Jar last night. Yeah, unfortunately I didn't finish it Monday night, but I did last night, and I did really love this. This was so good. Like, looking back, I have a new appreciation for Eurydice's chapter because of a line that is dropped in the conclusion, and it kind of made me think like, oh yeah, I guess I never put it through that lens before. And it made me realize, even while I was reading the chapter, I wasn't really thinking of it through that lens, but that lens was also a lot more at the forefront in Penelope's chapters, and that kind of was what linked those two. Medea's was also very interesting. Across the board, I really liked this. If you enjoy Greek stories, if you like the Greek myths, and particularly you want to look at some of the stories and how they've changed, how they've altered, and then also looking at them through this feminist lens, like I highly, highly recommend this. I enjoyed this so much. Then today had work. It was work. But this afternoon I went and got my hair done. Nothing special, I just got my roots redone. So while I was there, I worked on Small Sacrifices, about 45 of those pages. Still very dark. It's very surprising how long this case really took to be developed, because I'm at the point now where about 2 months have passed and still the police, the head DA, they really don't have much evidence. They kind of have an eyewitness statement. They sort of are helping the daughter who survived to try and piece together a statement. But because of her injuries, the place in her brain that assists with speaking was damaged during her injury. Effectively has had to relearn how to speak. And then obviously on top of that, the trauma. I mean, she's like 10, I think. But it's also just interesting at how well Diane Downs played the victim. She really doesn't help herself by constantly being in the limelight. She is always ready to call the media up. Rule does give way too many descriptions. Not always now, but I still occasionally will have like a random paragraph that it just feels like is unnecessary background. So I got my 40 pages read of this, and then while I was walking Faith and then making dinner, I listened to some more of The Five. This is interesting, but not from a true crime standpoint. It's interesting from a historical standpoint. My throat's getting dry. Well, yes, I am learning more about these victims and their lives. I also feel like I'm just learning a lot more about London at this time period, the everyday life that these women lived, especially insanely classist the society was, which isn't super surprising. I think I'm on the third victim, and it's being reinforced with each of them, how really each of them were just living their lives and then due to unfortunate circumstances fell on really hard times, with every single one of them ending up in the lowest class. Essentially, the first victim, Polly, really wasn't even a prostitute. It was a false report. She was just a poor woman who was living on the streets. But because the cops labeled her as a prostitute, that kind of became the ongoing theory. So it seemed like they shifted the narrative around the Ripper case to fit with that. On one hand, this is very interesting. It's just not at all quite what I was anticipating, because it feels like really the main takeaways I'm having from this book so far is more on European life at this time and the society and how they viewed people. So I just had dinner, which was a delicious meatloaf with a side of veggies. Now I need to do some editing because I still have not finished editing Friday's video. That's not good, Nat. I think tonight, because I finally finished Pandora's Jar, I am gonna read Spy Family Volume 7 after I finish editing and can relax. I'll get this cranked out real fast and I'll have plenty of reading time. Fingers crossed that happens. Hey guys. Oh, I haven't talked in a few hours. Yeah, so I'm definitely still fighting something off. Thankfully, I do think I caught it pretty early because like at this point I'm mostly just draining. Barely even have a sore throat anymore. My nose run like a faucet. That's the content you come here for, right? But because of this, and seeing as how I'm fairly certain I caught this cold from my niece and nephew, I didn't go over to my brother's tonight because I didn't want to take the chance of me giving this back to them, or the dregs of what is remaining in my niece making mine worse, because Josh is also possibly fighting something off, but he thinks it might be a sinus infection, not a cold. To be fair, he is very susceptible to sinus infections because because of his sinuses. It's been a whole thing. Work was actually pretty good today. I was very, very productive. However, I have gotten a fair amount of reading done since I last talked to y'all. First up, I did read Spy Family Volume 7 last night. This series just brings me so much happiness. It's so sweet. I can definitely see this becoming like a comfort reread series in the future. Ironically, the events that are happening in this volume are actually all the episodes we've seen recently in season 2 of the anime, which I find very amusing. Very impressed with the anime at how closely they have kept things to the manga, even when it comes to like art panels. For the most part, this one was really mostly filler missions. Nothing is really truly developing the plot. There's a little bit in the very first one, which was closing out the things that happened in the last volume, and then there's a little bit happening at the end mission that closes out this one. So both of those feel like they're actually focusing on the plot. Everything in the middle, though very cute and providing some exposition to give some of our characters a little bit more background, a little bit more growth, really they're filler. That's not a bad thing. That happens with manga and anime all the time. But so I did kind of drop my rating for this one a little bit. I did want to show though, I find this hilarious. So this is the cover with Damien, right? It's Anya mocking him. I just thought that was so funny. On top of not feeling great, it also was just so gloomy today, so I did not feel like taking Faith on a walk. It got dark very quickly right after work. Rather, I just listened to some more of the 5 while I like made dinner and did some cleaning around the house and stuff. I think I'm about 87% in, so I'm pretty close to finishing it. I have such conflicting feelings about this book so far. I think namely, I went into this expecting true crime and I shouldn't have, because really Rubenhold has put no focus at all on the Ripper element of the story. I do appreciate that, because what she is telling is the lives of these women, these victims who unfortunately their names are so often forgotten. And in the case of the last victim, the one that I actually just started into, we don't even know if that was actually her real name. She is known as Mary Kelly, but in reality, nobody has ever come forward to claim her as a relative. All of the stories of people who did know her say she lied and created backgrounds left and right. It's very possible that this poor woman has gone down in history, but nobody really knows her real name. That is quite significant. So on one hand, I appreciate the fact that Rubenhold is not putting a focus on the Ripper. This does feel very, very much like going through a museum, just reading the little plaques is a bit more disjointed. And as I've moved on, it's become more obvious how she jumps around with the timeline too. There will also be dives into characters that, yes, are significant in this woman's life, but I don't feel like the amount of detail that the author gives those random individuals is really necessary. I do think it's very interesting looking at this from like a historical feminist lens and talking about how each of these women suffered from very similar circumstances, and the situations they ended up having to deal with impacted their class, their standing in society, and what they were able to do, the issues that they ended up developing because of that status. So far, I do believe only 2 of them were actually sex workers, which I do think was something interesting Rubenhold presented that I never learned previously, so I will applaud this book for that. And then also, the writing style just does not make for the most enjoyable reading experience. It is pretty dry. It's so fact-based. There's very little narrative really happening, all facts. Apart from that, I read my 100 pages for the week in Small Sacrifices. I only had about 40 pages left and I was pretty engaged. I picked this up tonight and just knocked those out. With this one, it is crazy. It is crazy how narcissistic Downs is and how she constantly puts herself in the middle of the situation that she thinks she's making better. She thinks she's showcasing herself as a victim by doing so. And then, oh my gosh, her poor daughter. We're officially actually diving back into the investigation bits though. The police and the DA have sort of been reinvigorated, and Downs has ended up implicating herself a little bit more because she constantly keeps changing her story. And then eventually, even though her children are in protective custody, she maneuvered away for her to get her daughter alone. And her daughter is really the only one who could identify Diane as the shooter. In that one scenario, it did feel like I was reading a thriller book. I was kind of on the edge of my seat to see what happens. I think Rule actually handled that situation very well in how she wrote that entire scene. Rules writing still a little verbose, still occasionally having to skim, but for the most part, sucked in. It is just after 11, probably gonna have about another 30 minutes of reading time before Josh gets home, so I am going to pick up Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson, which hopefully will be a bit more positive than the last 2 books that I've been reading. I say that and then notice that this says crippling depression and anxiety on the back. But anyway, I am gonna go finish making my tea and then I'm gonna start into this one. Hi, it's been a minute. It's currently Sunday. I think the last time I talked to y'all, I mentioned the fact that I was feeling under the weather. I was thinking that I had caught my nephew's cold, and I definitely did. Initially, it didn't seem like it was that bad, but it definitely hit me harder than I was originally expecting, because on Friday and Saturday, I just did not feel great. It was as though I knew my body was getting over it, but I still just felt like death because of that. Then, to make matters worse, Josh had a sinus infection, so we were both miserable, meaning that Friday and Saturday we mostly just vegged around. We ate so much soup. We got pho. My brother was very kind and brought over some of his homemade chicken soup for us, and then we got potato soup for dinner on Saturday. So we literally just spent like all of yesterday watching Naruto. We took a nap and then we went to Walgreens to get like, you know, all the 𝗖cie essentials. Today, I had a little bit of energy and I just had a ton of stuff I needed to get done, so I was like actually pretty productive. I washed and changed the sheets on the bed. I washed all of like my hand towels that I used for the kitchen. I made homemade veggie stock. I washed my makeup brushes. I did some dishes, that sort of stuff. Anyway, while doing all of that, I finally finished out The Five by Holly Rubenhold, and I liked this. No, okay, let me backtrack. I liked what the author was trying to do with this book, but the final product just is not the sort of book that I really want to read. It very much felt like she was just relaying a ton of facts to you. And while on one hand, you know, I felt very informed, I did learn some about a regular woman's life at this time period, how important social status was, things like that, but thought it was going to be somewhat in line with true crime and maybe have some commentary on why the killer is the one who always gets the attention in comparison to the victims. There was a small amount of that in the author's conclusion, which I appreciated. That really just exacerbated my issue because it made me realize that's what I was wanting from this book. I wanted more commentary. I wanted more of a narrative. This was a very informative read, but like it really wasn't super enjoyable, and that's kind of a shame. So after that, started into Furiously Happy. I had probably been like maybe about 50 pages in, and I've been listening to the audiobook of this for most of the day in between when I would occasionally watch an episode of MasterChef. Currently, I am at 283 pages. So I didn't quite finish this in this vlog, but I will be finishing it here shortly. Absolutely hilarious. Jenny Lawson, she's so funny to me. I really want to label that as to me because I totally know people. This humor style would drive them insane. Narrative style would drive them insane because it bounces around a lot. I really love the message she has that the title comes from, being furiously happy, like just being determined to be happy with your life, just despite all of the things working against you. I love how open she is with her mental illness and how she talks about it. So vulnerable at times, but she also can laugh at herself and the ridiculous situations she's in. Her relationship with her husband sounds so entertaining. It seems like they work together very well, and I love any interaction between Victor and Jenny within the book. I haven't been tabbing this, but there's been just a few lines here and there that actually feel quotable but very influential, and like I would love to have that sort of a mindset in my everyday life. She talked about the spoons theory, which I've heard about before, but I really liked the perspective she put it into for me. There are photos in this as well, which
They just crack me up. Many of them are just so ridiculous, but they pair with her stories perfectly. I've been having a phenomenal time with this. I forgot how much she made me laugh in Let's Pretend This Never Happened. Reinvigorated to go pick up Broken, which is her newest book, I believe. I'm loving this. It's so fun. So yeah, this vlog kind of went off the rails in the end just because I basically didn't film anything for the last 3 days, but I was sick and I feel like that is a very valid excuse. Thank you so much for coming to my channel today, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I have all my socials as well as a few ways you can support me linked in the description. I come out videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!